Hey, leaders and go-getters. If you're here, you're all about growth, pushing boundaries, stepping up, and making an impact. But when it comes to your career, are you leading the game or just playing along? Whether you're chasing a promotion, switching careers, or just want to stand out, it all starts with one thing: your executive summary. And guess what? We've got the Ultimate Executive Summary e-playbook, and it's 100% free. This step-by-step guide will take you from a blank page to a bold, standout executive summary that grabs attention and gets results. It's time to stop blending in and start owning your career story. Download your free copy now at leadthegame.org/free resources. And while you're there, check out 3 more powerful tools to help you take control of your career. Don't let your resume ride the bench. Get in the game. Head to leadthegame.org/free resources and grab your free e-playbook today. Now back to the show.
Welcome to What's on Your Bookshelf, a life and leadership podcast where we live out loud the pages of the books that are on our shelves, with your host, Denise Russo and Sam Powell.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of What's on Your Bookshelf. This is our life and leadership podcast where we're living out loud the pages of the books that are on our bookshelves. My name is Denise Russo. I'm here with my friend Sam Powell, and together we are going through a book called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. This is a great little book about how do you turn your trials into triumphs in life. It's broken up into 3 parts. The first part was about our perceptions about things, and now we're in part 2, which is about how we take action on the way we think about certain things. And the first part of our episode today is about how what's right is what works. I'm looking forward to diving into that with you today. Sam, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm definitely interested in this. This, to me, these 2 chapters in this section are really about, to me, being creative in your approach, right? I think last time was more about this system and doing the right thing and kind of like that felt more like steady movement forward. This is more the let's figure it out. Let's make it work. let's just kind of take a more direct, but in a creative way approach.
I think so too. So I really like how in my book, he starts with another Marcus Aurelius quote that really simplified for me what this chapter is. And I had to read it a couple times to see how it applied to my life today, because this is an author from, hundreds, if not thousands of years ago, right? So it says, the cucumber is bitter, then throw it out. There's brambles in the path, then go around. That's all you need to know. And I was like, is it really that simple? Like something bad is happening, well, then move around it or ignore it or throw the thing away. And I struggle with this myself at home because I'll have something like, let's say, a leftover in the refrigerator. I just won't want to get rid of it because I paid a lot of money for it the first time around. But he makes it pretty clear. Like if you don't like it, if you haven't already eaten it, if it's something on your desk that you're not going to use, if there's something in your way that you bought a long time ago that you thought would help you do something at work and it just isn't, then why are you keeping it? Get rid of it, throw it out, go around the obstacle. If it's that simple, is it that simple?
Yeah. And I think it's the thing we always miss, right? Sometimes the right path is just the very simple thing in front of you. And I love the story this chapter started out with the 2 companies trying to buy land to farm bananas, essentially. And the problem is that 2 different people claimed to have owned the property. 2 people had deeds. They both claimed to have rights to it. And the one company fighting for it was this huge, one of the biggest food producer companies. And the other one was a smaller company. And so the big guns went in the way you would think they would. They hired all the lawyers. The lawyers went and did all the research and they're trying to figure out, what's going on. The other guy, he just went and sat and talked to the 2 people and said, hey, can I buy both of your can I buy the property from both of you? Like, sure, he paid more, but he won. He owned the property. Like at the end of the day, it was just this like, the choice was obvious. Go talk to the two guys. Like, don't try to like sort it out and take this super complicated path that, is like quote unquote right. Let's figure out who the correct owner is and do whatever. It's like, no, one of them is the correct owner. So let's just buy them both out. Like, there was something about this story that was like, duh. It got me thinking, like, how many places in my life am I doing this? Where I'm sitting here trying to design this perfect thing, trying to like do all the right things. When it's like, yeah, how about I just cut through this path? And that actually is the way.
Have you ever seen this TV show that's out right now called Tulsa King with Sylvester Stallone?
No.
Oh, you got to go watch it. So if you have Paramount Plus, I think is where the show is on streaming. And he is the epitome of this entire chapter. And now he's cunning, okay? He just spent like 2 decades in prison. He's a gangster. He was in the mafia. He gets displaced and sent to Tulsa, Oklahoma, because they're trying to just kind of get rid of him. But he ends up building like an empire there. And the story of the banana farmers is almost identical to what happens in season 2 of this television show. And so I don't want to give spoilers if there's people watching the show, except to say that this chapter, which is about looking at things like any way that works is the right way. Now, within reason, not breaking the law and not doing some of the things that the show does, because it's still about a gangster and it's about drugs and it's about the mafia. But the principles of this chapter, which is there was this mega rich guy who owned lots of property and had lots of farmers, was competing against him, and he had no staff. He had no knowledge or awareness of the industry. All he had was his wits and sort of street smarts. And that's what ended up making him be successful. And so the book says that once you get started on something, and as long as the conditions are right, you don't have to wait for everything to be perfect. You don't have to wait for everything to be exactly how you expect or want it to be. You just have to get started. And the author says it's better to focus on making do with what you've got. It doesn't have to be pretty. And so the idea has to be, I think, in this section, which is about action, is what is your actual goal? So in this case, the goal was to create these farms with the bananas, but they got stuck and they thought their goal no longer was that. Their goal was like competing against each other. And that wasn't the goal. And the goal of competing against each other was preventing the ultimate real goal, which was being able to own the property, to have the bananas to sell to the people, to make a profit.
Yeah. And this is why, like, as a coach, I always focus on what is the goal, right? Like, what's the goal of the session? What is the ultimate goal of this whole coaching engagement? Like, what are we trying to accomplish? Because we inevitably get off track, right? Every single one of my clients is going to go on some random story that, feels strong. It feels like it's part of it. And it's like, yeah, but what about, how does that fit into what you're trying to accomplish? And then it's like, oh, okay, never mind. Right? Like we'll just move on into this. And it's that focus on what's the goal, right? The goal is to sell bananas, not figure out who the rightful owner of this property is. It's one of them. So like, it doesn't really matter. And like the same company, same story, he kind of goes on to talk about how it was illegal to build a bridge across the river. And so the guy didn't build a bridge. He bought 2 large barges that stick out, and then a little thing that could be like put in between them and taken down. So like, it was never a bridge, right? It was like just kind of playing with those rules. And one of my favorite sayings and one of my mottos for life is actually from the show Whose Line Is It Anyways? It's an improv show, and it's the rules are made up and the points don't matter. And that is exactly what I mean. What every time I say that, and when somebody's like, oh, I have to do this, or oh, I'm supposed to do this, and it's like, yeah, those rules, like someone just made those rules up. We're just going along with them. You don't really have to follow them, right? And we're not violating anything by taking a different path, right? We're still we're not harming anyone. We're not doing anything that's, detrimental to, the greater good here. We're just being creative with how we get from point A to point B.
Yeah, so the point B part, which is the finish line, may not be the goal. The goal is how to get to B, right? Because there's a lot of ways that you could get from A to B. The other day, I was coming home from well, let me back up to why I was going to where I was going. So the plan was to go to Disney World and just spend the day and walk around, and that's just something that I like to do because I could get exercise and I live close by. So
How many people would like love that life PS sidetrack? Like I know so many people that it's like they love Disney and it's like Disney's an event because we live far away from it.
Right,
Whereas
right.
you're like, I think this afternoon I may go stroll the park. Like
So
what
here's
a
what's
life.
funny about it. I've crafted my life to be able to do that. I live
I love
right
that.
between a beach and right between Disney World. And
Lovely.
so that's part of the intention I crafted to live where I live. So I went to Disney. Well, the plan was to go to Disney World. Well, then we realized as soon as we were getting close by, like, oh my gosh, the traffic here is insane today. And it's in the middle of spring break. So traffic, of course, is insane. So we ended up deciding, okay, is the goal that we really want to go to Magic Kingdom, or was the goal we really wanted to just go have fun in the environment of Disney World? So we took a detour. So we ended up going first over to where there's an outlet mall for Disney. And so it's an outlet mall with a lot of shops. And we went in, and the goal was just to walk. That's the whole purpose of why we were going to go to Disney World. So we went into like a couple stores. There was nothing we liked, and we ended up leaving. And it was funny because Quinn and I started laughing, thinking, we went to a mall where people's goal is to go there and buy something. And we ended up going and not buying anything. And then we ended up going over to Disney Springs, which is sort of like the free version of Disney where there's shop. Well, it's not free. It's free to get into, but then you go to shops and restaurants and stuff like that. And we ended up with like last minute decision going to Disney has a Cirque du Soleil show on their property at Disney Springs. And it just so happened that they had this sale going on for spring break. So we went to the show, and Sam, it was magnificent. It was not part of the plan to go spend the day at Disney Springs to go to the Cirque du Soleil show, but we ended up having an amazing meal. We went to this awesome show that was so moving. The story was so beautiful. We got our exercise in, and then on the way home, bam, we hit traffic like bad. And so the goal was just to get home. And normally point A to point B was not going to be the way that we had to get home. So we started looking at the GPS to figure out if the computer could tell us better ways to get home. And his phone was saying one way, and my phone was saying another way, and the car's GPS was saying a third way. So we had to pivot, and we had to make do with doing it a completely alternative way. But as it so turned out, we ended up having to take a longer mileage way home that ended up getting us home faster than the shorter mileage way because of traffic and stuff. And then it turned out that once we got home, we realized the reason traffic was so bad was there was this horrible accident on a bridge. Speaking of bridges. And so it was almost as if we had tried to take the normal route, one, we could have been in the accident. Two, we could have not been in the accident, but stuck for hours, not able to even move at all. So you have to be flexible and realize there's a lot of ways around point A to point B that you have to be willing to do. And in this chapter, which is called What's Right is What Works. And sometimes we get so stuck in our ways and say, nope, the right way is we're supposed to drive home on this highway in this direction. But in that case, it wasn't the right way and it wasn't the right thing. And so it's about progress, not perfection. I love how he ends this part of the chapter with that. So curious what else you have for this part of the chapter before we move into the next one.
Yeah, I love that story of like, it's just about moving forward, right? It's not about the path necessarily that you take. And it doesn't matter like that you've tried to design, like you're following the right path, but then the right path becomes the wrong path as you go down it. And so then it's just about pivoting and, doing something else because you don't lose sight of like, I'm just trying to go walk. I'm just trying to get into the environment. Like that's it. That was the whole goal. And you end up somewhere kind of beautiful along the way. And I love that. And like you said, I love that he ends this with think progress, not perfection. And he goes on to say, under this kind of force, obstacles break apart. They have no choice. Since you're going around them or making them irrelevant, there's nothing for them to resist. And I love that, right? Like, I'm not going to fight this obstacle. I'm just going to walk right around, and it has no choice but to kind of dissolve into the background, right? It's in the rearview mirror, and nobody cares about it. And I think that like that really sums up this chapter for me. And I love that thought process of the right action is kind of the next, it's the next action. It's not the perfect action. It's just the next right thing that you have to take.
Next right thing. And sometimes the next right thing is not the obvious right thing. So the next chapter is super interesting. So if you're someone who's been watching or listening to our podcast, or maybe now you're watching because this is now also in video format, then perhaps you're also watching our exclusive series, which is our series that's hosted by Zach Elliott. And Zach's series is a series where we are using military authors and books that were written for people in business that are leaders. So I was so interested when we got into this next chapter because it's in perfect alignment with a book that we are going through with his series. So if you are not familiar with that series yet, I definitely encourage you to subscribe to our general podcast because you'll get those episodes as well. But this next chapter of our book, Obstacle is the Way, is called In Praise of the Flank Attack. And it's really an interesting take on how if you have an opponent or you have an obstacle or you have this thing that is preventing your progress, that maybe the solution around it is to do exactly what you just said. You go around it in a way that's unexpected.
Yeah. And I love the story he starts out with here too, because this is about George Washington. And I didn't know this, which feels really dumb that I didn't know this, but he said, like, it's not surprising that, like, you don't know this because we tend to, like, make everything seem like some grand win or whatever, right? Like when a lot of people think of George Washington, it's like he led the army that defeated the British and, created the beginning of what is the United States and blah, blah, like, right. It's this like grand adventure, but the reality was very messy, like very, very messy. And we were like outgunned, outmanned, right? Like there's a great like part of the like if you ever watched the Hamilton musical, I love all of the parts of George Washington in it, but like that's really what it was. Like it was the little scrappy, like backwoods guys going against a very coordinated, very well-trained army that had really conquered a lot of the world at that point. And the reason that Washington was so successful was because he would go around. It was never a direct attack. It was always this like, what do we do to get around the side, right? The flank attack, right? What do we do to, take out this one or that one? And it said he had a sense of which minor skirmishes would feel and look like major victories, right? Like it was the psychological game. It was the little wins that really like turned the tides type of stuff. And that's like, if you really look into the stories, and I think about what I do know about history, and now I need to go back and reread is what I've kind of learned from this, is that it's not what you think of now of like, I think, sitting here 200 and some years later, like you think of like the US military and this huge force and all this kind of stuff. And like, that is definitely not what it when it started, right? And it's such a good reminder. And I love that he talks about B.H. Lyndon Hart came to the stunning conclusion. He studied like 30 conflicts comprising more than 280 campaigns from ancient to modern like warfare. And he said in only 6 of the 280 campaigns was the decisive victory a result of a direct attack on the enemy's main army. Only 6. That is 2%. And so we win not in this, like, I'm going to throw all my effort at the big guy. I'm going to like take this on, take this head on. It's, I worked smart, not hard. And I think that's like, if I had to summarize this chapter, it's that idea of how can you work smart, not hard, because working hard is not going to get you anywhere in this kind of a situation.
I love that part in the chapter also. I highlighted that whole section about from going from the unexpected and from the psychological perspective to build your strategy. He talks about how when you're really at your wits' end and you're straining and straining with all your might, when people tell you you look like you might pop a vein, so think about that. Maybe you're at a job that feels really hard right now, or you don't understand why leaders are making the decisions they're making, or perhaps you're trying to build a company and you just feel a little bit stuck, or maybe you have a situation in your personal relationships where you just really are at your wits' end. The author says, take a step back and then go around the problem. It doesn't say stay stuck. It doesn't say don't address the problem. It doesn't say avoid the problem. It says go around the problem, find leverage, approach from what is called the line of least expectation. And so you might have an initial instinct that you want to just attack a person, attack a problem, attack a situation. But if you take a step back, look at the bigger picture, it's kind of like the peasant from the first chapter, right? Like he was facing this giant obstacle, this big boulder. He knew he couldn't walk around it. He knew he couldn't climb over it, but he took a step back. And when he could see more clearly, he realized all I really need is this little stick that can give me some leverage to move it out of the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. It's that, him just like taking a hammer at that giant boulder wasn't going to do anything, right? It's an immovable object in that approach. But if you work smart, if you think about what tools you've got, or you think about, hey, if I from the side push it this way, like it's absolutely that. And when you said like, oh, if you're thinking about how to deal with like work and things like that, like all I could think about was, you're trying to go, like we end up feeling so powerless, feeling like I can't go against the organization, the company, it's like, this has all been handed down to me. And so therefore we can't do it. And it's like, nah, there's always like a way to work inside of that, right? Like I remember a million little micro moments as a leader. Somebody would hand me something and be like, we have to do this. And I'd be like, no. I just like, what happens if I don't do it? Right. Like, it's that question of like, how do I make this work by like looking as if we're doing this thing that makes no sense and is going to waste all of our time and I'm going to spend no effort on that, but hit the sentiment of what it is, right? Like make a result happen, do that. And I think that like, that was the stuff that mattered the most, right? Those creative solutions, this is the crazy situation and the big force coming at me. And so how can I be creative in that? I'm not going to just accept it. I'm not going to try to butt against it and go talk to whoever and be like, I'm going to escalate this up the chain and make it happen. It's like, it doesn't function that way. Yeah. And maybe I think of that too, like from all my experience in working with cloud software, like I was on the earlier waves of that in the first part of my career. And we'd have customers who are so used to like owning all the code of their product, right, on their, installed system. And so like, if they wanted it to work a different way, you just hire somebody who's really good at coding and they would go in and we would make it work however way you wanted it. But like in a cloud software where you're all sharing the code, that's not going to happen. You can tell me all day long, you don't like how this works, but like, if I change it for you, I'm impacting everyone. And so that's not it. And so I would have customers come to us like, I have been yelled at by C-suite executives saying like, you need to change this, you need to do whatever. And I'm like, that's just not how that's not how this works. And so then we had to get really good at, well, then what are you really trying to get at, right? Like, what's the win? And we've got to attack it from a different way, right? We've got to change a process. We've got to make an adjustment. We've got to do something and attack the flank, not the head on, full blown army of the cloud code.
Here's the thing. You got to take time to think. So design thinking, diversity in thought, brainstorming, bringing people together that don't always agree, but opening space for there to be some sort of emerging ideas and thoughts is so important. I used to work for AirTran Airways before you and I came together to work together. And there was at the time call centers at airlines, and there was also nobody using the internet to book airline tickets. So this is dating it a little bit because we weren't using the computer to pay for airline tickets. And the idea was, and the reason I got my job was because my master's degree thesis was whether or not I believed people would use and trust the internet to book their air travel. So it ended up working. I had the right hypothesis, I suppose.
Excellent.
But
good job. At least you didn't write about the opposite.
the opposite. Yeah, like my 11th grade teacher who said you could take typing or computers, but computers are going to be a fad. Everybody needs to know how to type. Yeah. I could type pretty fast, let's say that. But anyways, we were in a situation where we were a small airline in the hometown hub of Delta. And we were competing against this monster airline who was very successful, very well known, the hometown darling of brands in Atlanta, Georgia. And we had to come up with a concept to build a call center and compete against the customer service that was like pristine at Delta. And we just weren't winning the game by following the way everybody else did it. So we ended up coming together and thinking about this idea of hitting from the flank. So what happened? We ended up opening a call center on a college campus, right outside of a college campus, about an hour away from the airport. So there would be a low likelihood that the kids were going to use the benefit of free air travel. And we paid them more than Chick-fil-A, which was at the time the highest paid retail type place that kids were getting paid to go to college in this little town that all there was a hospital and a college and farms. Mm-hmm. So we paid them more. We gave them like the Disney version of customer service training. And we've created an environment where there was a natural revolving door that once the kids were ready to graduate, would bring in the next batch of kids. What ended up happening is this little company was like the David versus the Goliath, if you will, in the airline business. AirTran was winning all sorts of awards, and they were becoming well known that most people thought AirTran was an Atlanta airline, and yet the hub for AirTran was in Orlando, and the headquarters was in Orlando. So this was an example that there's sometimes new ways of looking at things or doing things in a creative way that still get you the goal that you want and maybe even get you better than what you wanted, but you can't always follow the prescription of what somebody else does to dictate your success. And this is a key in business. If you look at somebody else's success, that is their success. It doesn't have to be your story. Maybe that's not your story. And the path that they followed may very well be a path that was tread by other people as well, but it's not necessarily the path that your feet should be on.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I love, he says, the art of the side door strategy is a vast creative space. And it is by no means limited to war, business, or sales, like you're saying, right? Like and I love it's the art of the side door strategy. Like, I think I might print that out and put it on my wall in my office. Like, what's the side door strategy I need to be using? And it's funny. It made me think of like when you were just talking about the path that people are on. I was just watching Brene Brown's got a special on Netflix, which I didn't know. I actually found it because I was searching for a movie, like a totally different kind of movie that started with a B, and that popped up in my Netflix, and I was like, I didn't even know this was on here. So I was watching it the other day, and it's her giving like a talk to an audience, and it's lovely. It's all about like her daring greatly. It's really funny. It's great, but she tells the story of that TED Talk that launched her into like the stratosphere. And she was talking about her like her path of doing that. Like she ended up doing the talk because because of her day job was, she's a professor. And so they were like, hey, would you like to give the keynote at this, Houston event that we're doing? And she was like, sure. And then she decided, like, she tells the story about talking with her and her husband about, she was like, yeah, I'm not going to give my regular talk. And he goes, what do you mean you're not going to give your regular talk? And she goes, I'm going to talk about, vulnerability. And she's like, why? Why? And so she goes and she gives this talk and she goes, oh gosh, at least nobody's going to see that. And then she didn't realize it was on YouTube. And then she it was one of these things where it snowballed on her. Like she had no idea it was going to be put onto YouTube, onto the regular TED thing. And then have like millions and millions and millions of views. But it's the thing that launched her, right? Like it's the thing that really pushed her out there into the world. And it just was this, and as you said that, right? It's like, she wasn't using a backdoor strategy, but it ended up being her like backdoor strategy to like the success that she's got now is this alternate little path of just making this one change of like, yeah, I'm not going to give my regular talk. I'm going to give this other one. Right. And that's that was the path. It was like your your story you told us about your trek to Disney and and all that. It wasn't the path you had set out on. It was, just part of the journey that I thought was just really interesting. But that's what clicked in my head when you said that was, yeah,
I'm going
it's
to totally
that side
check
door
that
strategy.
show out. This is a perfect segue for what we're going to talk about next week, since we're out of time for today. And it's about how to use obstacles against themselves. So I wonder, because I haven't seen the show, I wonder if she had any fear in thinking about wanting to have a completely different topic, because you said that she kind of made a mention that, well, nobody's going to watch it anyway. So maybe she felt like this is a testing ground where I can talk about the thing I really want to talk about. Yeah. And now that's her business, and that's a business that's impacting millions of people's lives around the world with her her sort of pivot into this different atmosphere of what she teaches.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on that. And she does talk about the fear that she had, and her wanting to pull back the YouTube talk. She was like, "Can we delete it?" It's like, no. But yeah, using the obstacles against themselves, I think, is it. It's like if you embrace that the obstacle's there, which is the whole thing we're doing here, then find that side door strategy, right? Like we talked about today. Find that thing to move you forward, but you can also use it against itself.
Interesting. This is a great way to end the episode for today, that don't fight your purpose. Your purpose was predestined in your life. Like what your purpose is, if you fight against it, it's still going to come about to be, because it's what's meant for you. And the book ends by saying you may have a battle of your ego and pride rather than your tactical advantage of how to attack whatever that purpose is. And the author ends by saying, believe it or not, that's the hard way in life. And I do believe it. I believe that you fight against the things that are meant for you. It will make your life feel hard. And then he concludes the chapter by saying, remember, sometimes the longest way around is the shortest way home. And it truly was my story coming home from Disney the other day. So on that note, next week, again, we're going to be talking about using obstacles against themselves, and also where you can best channel your energy. So I'm really looking forward to that part of next week. But for this week, my name's Denise Russo. On behalf of my friend Sam Powell, this has been another episode of What's on Your Bookshelf.